All right, so let's talk The Last of Us. Now, for those of you who haven't watched the season finale yet, I'm going to break this up into two parts. We're going to have a non-spoiler review,
Yep.
and we're going to give a spoiler alert. And if you haven't seen it, get the fuck out. So, I'm going to go in. What?
Mute us, man.
Or mute us.
Motherfucker, you
Yeah,
say get the
you
fuck
can mute us.
out. Like, no,
We need
mute
the
us.
view. Don't actually
Oh,
get the fuck
That was
out.
very
Need the view,
aggressive,
bro.
sir.
Please, we need you. Dude, now that the season has wrapped up, and I know Justin might disagree with me, I think I'm gonna throw this out there. I think we might have seen the perfect season of a TV show, like top to bottom, beginning to end, casting, directing, writing, filming, CGI or lack of CGI in this case. The plot was watertight, no plot holes that I could find. I love finding plot holes. The pacing was on point. Like, y'all, I think this might be it. Like, I don't know another show, even Breaking Bad, which in my opinion, Breaking Bad was like the greatest show of its decade, got annoying and slow at points. And we just deal with that because it's TV. But like, this never got annoying. This never got slow. This never got boring. And I don't know, like, now that they've wrapped it up, they started out frame by frame, line by line for the game. They deviated a little bit in the middle, not too much, but they did it right. They did it tastefully. Came in at the end, right back to the game, wrapped it up cleanly, but left enough for us to want to watch the next season. Like, I don't know, y'all. This might be the perfect show. What do you think?
I don't know why you said I would disagree with you. I had some.
Did you like picking stuff apart?
No, I wasn't picking it apart. It was just minor like things, but it wasn't anything where I was like, "Oh, this like is detrimental to the show." I think for me personally, I agree with you 100%. There's nothing about it to me that makes it not an A+ show, and maybe makes it not the best TV show, especially in the history of like game and adaptations. I mean, they nailed it.
No question.
My only complaint was, and I think this is just a personal complaint, I personally felt like they went through it too quickly. Like, I could have used a couple of more episodes to flesh things out, but I do understand why they did it. They didn't want to drag it out. They didn't want to deviate from, the actual game plot. So I completely understand. This was just a personal preference. I think we could have gotten a little bit more, but I'm completely happy with the way that they did it. It was only just that minor personal thing for me. So I agree with you. A+ all around for sure.
Definitely. Yeah, I would not disagree with. I would not be upset about one or two more episodes. Go ahead, Ryan.
Sure, but honestly speaking, I felt like the pacing was just right. I personally feel like the pacing was just right. I mean, like, I watched the game, I never played it, so just put that out there. But I remember looking at it, remember that, or like, I see why they did a little bit of deviation, but it worked out perfectly. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I felt like it was paced just right, because for somebody that never watched the game or played the game, I mean, they're not going to know, so they need just a casual story, right? And I felt like that was enough of a casual story. I agree with you 110%. I don't see another show where it was just perfect. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Would say Game of Thrones until like season 5, and then afterwards it was like, all right, this is a little bit enough. You know what I'm saying?
We don't talk about Game of Thrones.
And the good news with this is season 2 is does season 2 jump straight into part 2 of Last of Us?
I would think so.
Well, no, they actually announced, and this was a part of like me, in my personal opinion, of like they could have stretched it out. Part 2 of the games will at least be broken up into 2 seasons. They did say it will be multiple seasons, and a big part of the reason why is because the game part 2 takes place years later, and Ellie is much, much older, and I don't think that they want to just jump right into that in the next season. And that was a part of the reason for me where I was like, well, if you can split part 2 up into 2 seasons, you could have probably split up part 1 into 2 seasons. And Ryan, to your point, I do think that I made the opinion that I had about it could have been longer based on the casual viewing experience. Us as gamers, we know the story, right? And if you look at each episode basically takes a significant part, like a significant segment of each game. We'll talk about the chapters of each game, and it basically condenses that chapter down into one episode, right? I feel like there was so much more they could have done in some of those episodes. And again, I'm not complaining from a standpoint of if it was done bad. As a casual viewer, though, I feel like if I was a casual viewer, I didn't know anything about the story, I'd be like, man, they were jumping around fast. Because you go from them being in the city, that was like one episode, and then next thing you know, like they're in the fucking mountains, like doing something else. You know what I'm saying? And like these characters that they introduce, we only get, other than Joel and Ellie, we basically only get one episode of any other supporting character.
You didn't think that, you thought that was too little, is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Right?
I thought it was too, I thought they could have done a little bit more within each story arc. Like, and that's just me personally. Again, doesn't deviate from the greatness of the show. I'm not taking that away from them at all. That's just a personal preference. Oh, I would have liked maybe a couple of more episodes to flush out some of this stuff a little bit more.
Let me ask you this then. I'm just playing a little devil's advocate at this point. Would extending the episode a little bit would have worked? Like, would that have worked for you instead of like just making more episodes? You know?
Maybe. I mean, tomato, right? Episodes that are too long, it's like you got to find the time to watch it. But at the end of the day, whether it's a separate episode or it's just tacked on to the episode before it, like it's still the same amount of time. You know, at the end of the day, the equation still works out the same. So I wouldn't have a preference there. It was just, you know, some of the things I think I would have liked to have seen fleshed out more personally. That's it. That's literally my only like small criticism of the show that I wouldn't even call a criticism, because I absolutely would go to bat for this show 100% as one of the greatest shows of all time.
Yeah, you're just saying it was so good that you would have liked more.
There we go.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Perfect way to put it.
I'll agree with that. I would not have been upset about one or two more episodes, especially like you said in the mountains or even around, well, some of the other stuff that I don't want to spoil too much. But yeah, I think my personal opinion, this is total speculation on my part, is that they maybe HBO got burned a little bit with Game of Thrones, and they were like, okay, you got to wrap this up cleanly. Yep. You can't drag this shit out. Like first season, if you kill it, we'll let you do what you want with the second season. But I feel like first season, they felt like they needed to just keep it tight, get through the first part of the game, deliver what we wanted. And then the second season, I'll be really interested to see where they go with the second season, because I'll be honest, I don't have as high of hopes, just because the story of the second game is not quite as compelling. I don't feel personally. It will be good. I'm sure it will be good, but it has, I think, more potential to go off the rails, lose us spending some time on characters that we don't necessarily love or even really care about. So it'll be a little bit of a minefield in the second season. But again, when they deviated in this season, they did it right. They expanded on characters that I didn't really pay that much attention to or even know about. In the case of the one episode with DLC that was a flashback, didn't even know about it. Still an amazing episode. So like at this point, they've earned my trust. I've said this before. I'm here for the ride, so we'll see what happens.
Part two.
Any thoughts before we get into the spoiler part?
Yeah, part two of the game is like very divisive, right? Like there are people who love it, there are people who hate it. I personally love it. I think they did an amazing job with part two in the story. Like it was different and fresh. It wasn't like the same thing, but like you very much felt the consequences of the first game constantly throughout the second game.
Yes.
So I was a huge fan. My only gripe with the second game was I just felt like it was absolutely too long. I remember getting to what I thought was the end, and then there was this whole nother part, and I was like, all right, like it's time to wrap this shit up. Like, but other than that, you know, I love the second game just about as much as I love the first one. I'll be interested to see how they do in the show. So, but like you said, they have my faith.
Yep. They've earned it at this point. Daddy Pascal, I'm here for it.
Daddy Pascal.
All right, so spoiler alert. Put it up on the screen now if you want. We are now going to talk about the last episode and the ending of the game. If you have not seen the end of the show, mute us, but please stay in here because we need your view, please. Justin gave me a warning about the first episode here. He said it starts out intense, and boy, did it. And this was another thing that I literally, the birth of Ellie, and it never even crossed my mind. Like, it crossed my mind like, oh, like she probably had parents at some point, but that was like as far as I got with it. The fact they tied it in with Marlene, they're best friends. She gets bit like right as she's giving birth. Like, could that be what made her immune? Like, do we know? Like, I have so many thoughts about this, but I want to hear y'all's.
First of all, did you know that was the voice actor of Ellie in the
I found out at the after episode thing, and I was like, I wish I had known that before because it was fucking cool. Because
how could you not? It literally sounded. I was like, this sounds like Ellie.
It did.
Like, it sounds like her.
I was like, man, she sounds so much like her. You're absolutely right. I should have known that. Did you know that the guy that got the knife in his neck in the episode before was the voice of Joel?
Yes, Troy
I
Baker.
did not.
Yeah. He didn't sound like Joel as much though when he was doing his.
He didn't.
Anyway, I'm sorry. Jumping. Go ahead.
Ryan, I think you. So I texted you guys about this, right? Like, I was a fan of the mystery in the game that we didn't know how Ellie became immune. I actually watched the after credits scene, they do the behind the scenes for the episode for this last one, and they did confirm that that is basically the reason that she's immune, is because she got bit, or because her mom got bit as she was giving birth to her. Here's my gripe with that, right? We've had hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of references for zombie apocalypse, right? I'm not even a fucking doctor, and the first thing I would have thought of in a zombie apocalypse of oh, how do we get immunity? Is children that are born during the fucking apocalypse. I feel like that's rule one. So for them to show that that's the reason that she's immune, and then we basically inferred that no doctor, anybody thought of this as an idea and tried to test it before we even got to this point. I personally feel like it was a miss, and I feel like they should have left it as a mystery so we didn't know, because I find it unbelievable that this pandemic or apocalypse has been going on for 20, 30 plus years, and nobody thought about oh, well, we probably should do some testing on some kids that were born after the apocalypse, or even just having the conversation around what happens if somebody was born as the person was infected but hadn't turned yet. I feel like that's zombie 101 stuff when it comes to finding immunity and finding cures. So I felt like that was a miss, again, for me. Not enough to say oh, this was poorly done or anything. That's just what they decided to go with. It is what it is. It's not anything too crazy. I thought the scene was really, really powerful, though, like you said, Nick, for the reasons that you stated. Them connecting, Marlene to Ellie's mom, them using the original voice actor. It's those small touches that really, really make this show great.
I'm going to disagree, because think about the logistics of this. It's not just kids born after the apocalypse. It's kids who have been exposed to it. Any kid who is already born and exposed to it is a zombie and dies, as we saw in the first episode. Remember, they killed that kid and Pedro Pascal's burning him. So how many chances are you going to get a live, healthy baby from an infected mother? Not many. Anybody who gets infected is probably going to get shot immediately, or if there's no one around to shoot her, then she's disgusting and fucked up by the time that anybody even notices her. So I feel like it's realistic enough to say that chances never happened before, that she was exposed for that little of a time that it was enough to give her immunity, but not enough to kill her. I'm with it, but at the same time, I wouldn't have been upset if they would have left it a mystery.
So I agree with you. But I disagree in terms of in the first few years, sure. But let's be honest, people do some really fucked up shit during the apocalypse. Me personally, and this may be a disagreement with people in the chat, but I would be a fucking savage during an apocalypse. Whatever we can do to survive, we're gonna do. And again, based off of my quote unquote knowledge of seeing other references of zombies, the first thing I would be is well, maybe not the first thing, but once we got to a certain point, I'd be we should probably find a pregnant woman, let's infect her as she's having a baby and let's see what happens, personally, because we've seen this in other meetings before. So
you're the minority on that one, bro.
I personally would have tried.
No, you're the only one on that motherfucker, dog.
I would have tried any. I mean, at this point though, with what you know about zombies, with what you know about apocalypses and how this shit could happen,
it's not up to
would you
dude.
not be willing to try anything to figure this shit out?
You might be willing to, but try and get that mom and dad to get on board with it.
Hey,
exactly. I want to see how you're gonna get at the pregnant mom like
Because he's
you
going to
put
go
like a
Pedro
net-
Pascal on your ass and
gonna
murder
hold a
you and
gun-
your
I'm
entire
gonna-
fucking
I'm
building
gonna hold a
if you
gun
try
to
and
their
touch his
face
baby.
and make them do it, just like when they shot Sarah. Like they got orders and they were like, you know, like I mean, literally this show. I mean, a big premise of this show is about people doing unthinkable things because it's an apocalypse, right? Like I feel like that would fall right in line. Like, you know, damn the humanity piece of it. Like I'm trying to save humanity. That's just me personally. You know, I disagree. So.
You just think motherfuckers gonna be like, I volunteer as tribute. Here go my pregnant ass
No,
wife.
I
Like,
don't.
you
I
think
don't
that's what's gonna
no,
happen?
I don't. I'm going to volunteer them as tribute, and there's not going to be anything they can do about it. Sorry.
You can't fucking do that. Jay, they gonna shoot your ass.
What? How are they going to shoot me, Ryan? Like, if I have guns on them, if I kidnap them and make this happen, like, how are they going to shoot me?
I see what he's saying. Like, if you have someone who's not a Joel, is like a
Oh.
fucking like superhero. Like, if it had been anyone else, like you just hold a gun to their head and be like, "What are you gonna do about it?" I get
Exactly.
it. I mean, I disagree, but I get it.
You got.
I think that
We've
ties
seen
right into
worse.
the ending, though.
We've
We
seen
know
worse,
where
right?
Justin falls on the big question of the
I mean-
ending was Joel did right or wrong?
That's everybody's question, and I mean, I don't know, man. You gotta protect the kids, right? She's
Because
young,
here's what we know. We know why he did it, obviously.
Right. clearly.
We know, or we have a pretty good idea that Ellie wouldn't have wanted him to do it
of course.
because of what their whole conversation they had on the balcony beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I mean, he's lying to her. That's wrong. But at the end of the day, like, is all of humanity worth sacrificing this one person? It's the trolley car. Have you guys heard of the trolley car dilemma?
Yeah. Oh. Mm-mm.
It's a taught in like ethics classes where you have a trolley car that is on a path to kill like 5 people that are strapped down, like old West cartoon style. They're strapped to the tracks. The trolley car is heading towards them. You have the ability, you're standing at the switcher, and you have the ability to switch that trolley to another track that's going to kill one person. So the question is, do you do nothing and let 5 people die, or do you do something and purposefully cause the death of one person? You have now directly caused the death of a person instead of like standing by and letting 5 other people die.
Take one to save many. I get it.
I
Yeah.
mean, there's also other like, you know, theories behind that too, because there's the whole thing of like you always see in movies where they're like, you know, let's take the Titanic for example, right? And they're like women and children first, but ideally, like in a survivor type situation, it shouldn't be based off women and children. It should be based off people who could actually contribute to like a society that you're like trying to keep up, right? So like let's say everybody in the world was dying and you had to pick who got to live. Like you need to pick architects and people who like doctors. Like it's not based off of like, oh, women and children. So it's all of these like moral and ethical dilemmas. But Nick, you said you know where I stand. Actually, not quite. Objectively, you know, if you're looking at this objectively in like a vacuum, you obviously save humanity, right? You're talking millions upon millions of people. You're talking the end of a pandemic. We can go back to some sort of life as we know it, right? Objectively, I understand. You don't save Ellie. You let her die so that she could save everyone else. Personally, I understand completely where Joel's coming from. At the end of the day, I am my own person. Like in an apocalypse, I don't really give a fuck about anybody else. So personally, if I look at Ellie as like my child and I feel like I need to save her, then I would do it. Like, so, but I will say the one big key to this though is too, there's a difference between them saying this is a 100% guarantee cure that's going to happen and oh, this is maybe a cure. Like they still had to like basically like dissect her brain, develop the cure, and it may not even fucking work. So based off of that fact alone, there's a lot of gray area in there. Now, if you can guarantee me it's going to create a cure, it's going to save the world, then I might have to think about it, even from a personal standpoint. But based off of a maybe, nah, fuck that. I would have done what Joel did, and I would have lit their asses up.
Dude. So we knew that scene was going to be lit because I remember in the game, the whole time You are struggling for every little bit of ammo you can
Yes.
find. You're like you're taping together like knives, like scissors to like sticks to like kill
The
people,
shiv.
and you're saving every little bit of ammo you can. That shitty little pistol to pop the clickers when they're coming at you, and finally it gives you an M4, and it's just like go ham, like kill fucking everybody. And I knew going into this episode, I was like, if they do this the way that I think they're gonna do it, it's gonna be crazy. And it didn't quite get to the level that I wanted it to, but it reminded me of that scene from Creed 3, the unmentioned scene where all the sound cuts out and you literally just like he is
Personal.
dead, dude.
It's
He
very
played
personal.
that so well where he was just dead. He's like, I don't give a fuck about any of you. You are all dying.
Yep.
I'm just killing you. Like he's just deadpan, just going through murder and everybody. Doctor comes to the room. Doctor's like, I'm not gonna let you take it. He's just like instantly
I
zero
laughed
zero
my ass off
hesitation.
when that shit.
It was made, dude. He just,
Yeah.
no, there's no question here in that man's eyes, and I love that there's been these like peaks that we've gotten to see of that side of Joel like 2 or 3 times throughout this season, where it's like this dude, like you do not want to be on his bad side because he will
why
do
he made it
fucking
across
anything.
all of these states, right? Because he's a fucking savage. The doctor scene was very, very huge because that obviously plays a significant role in part 2 of the game. So not going to give any spoilers there, but it's very
Oh shit, yeah.
it's very important, and there are significant consequences because of that. So I'm with you, Nick. I could have used a little bit more, like, I don't know. I wanted a John Wick style scene where like this man is just like popping people, and as they fall, he like catches the gun and just like capping folks. But obviously, this is not that type of show. We'll get that type of movie later on this month when we go see John Wick 4. I thought they did it very well. They made it very personal.
Yeah.
Like you said, they cut out the sound. It was very deep, emotional, like you felt it. I mean, they knocked it out of the park. So.
Yeah.
It was great.
So yeah, I'm very excited to see what season 2 holds. Again, trying not to get my hopes up as much, but it's hard when they did this good a job. And at the end of the day, like if this ends up being another Game of Thrones, like that falls apart at the end, so be it. We got the perfect season of television.
We'll just talk about season 1. That's all we'll talk about.
Right.
All right. That's it for the day, man. We talked about a lot. So if you're still listening, tuning in, don't forget to hit that follow button on Twitch so you never miss one of our live shows. Again, we stream every Monday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. Also follow us on Twitter and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please do both. And the handle for both is @spoileralert, the number 4, the letter U. Again, that's @spoileralert, the number 4, and the letter U. If we spoiled something for you today, sorry, not sorry, because we're just talking about the things we love. Spoiler alert, we do love all of you, and we will see you next week.
Yeah, buddy.
Later.
Shut up, Pauly D.